Hi, and welcome to Jazz Doodles with me, Andrea Vicari, on jazzlondonradio.com. My guest today is Pete Churchill. He's here in France with me, teaching on the Dordogne Jazz Summer School. So, welcome to the show, Pete.
Thanks very much.
And it's not your first time in France, I know, but the first time at the summer school. How are you enjoying that?
It's great. Actually, it's been a fantastic week. Great students, obviously, massive variety of students, people from everywhere and different levels, but it's great to meet new teachers as well, people doing the same thing as you, but who you never meet, you know.
And I understand you're actually working with a former student of yours who kind of, Paolo Vera, who was very keen to bring you over here when we were talking about expanding the vocal classes.
Yes, I mean, it's really interesting. It comes at a time when students leave college and they're highly skilled and they go on with their lives and they cease to become students, become colleagues, and we're all facing the same problem and trying to do the same thing.
Well, she was one of the students that I taught
That's
at
right,
Trinity.
And then she came to the Royal Academy as a postgrad. But she's incredible. She's carving out a fantastic career for herself here.
I'd run 1,000 miles if I could. I'd sing to you all the while if I could. I'd leave, get lost for years if I could. I'd face all my darkest fears if I could. I would go do it all if things were easy.
Moving on to your CD that you've got here today, what's the CD called?
The CD is called Stories to Tell.
And what's the story behind this then?
Well, I've been writing songs for years, and quite a lot of my commissions are based around songs. So I have to write songs for large educational things. I write kind of cycles of songs on certain issues for big schools projects and massed choirs at the Albert Hall and that sort of thing. And then Mishka Adams, who's a fantastic singer who was at the Guildhall and now lives in Berlin, wanted to make an album of my songs, and that was the catalyst. And we got together, a select team of people, Ben Barrett, fantastic guitarist who's also a singer, and Adriano Adewale, who's a fantastic percussionist, Brazilian guy, and of course the great Mark Lockhart, who's a treat to have on the album.
In fact, I was talking to Nikki on a programme and she'd mentioned Mark Lockhart as well, so he seems to be very much in demand.
Yeah, and for all the right reasons, he's astonishing.
So we're going to hear a track from your new CD. Which track are we going to hear?
I thought it'd be good to start with Shame on You, Shame on Me. It came out of a project I did based on immigration, and so it's an immigrant song.
He walks a lonely road both night and day. No one to share his load along the way. So many yesterdays in those eyes, can't you see? Might be you, he might be me. Oh, for a friendly face, a welcoming smile.
That was Shame on You, Shame on Me from Pete's new CD, Stories to Tell. And you've launched the CD and you're going to be touring it in October, is that correct?
Yes, that's right. We launched it at the Forge at the beginning of July, and that's the venue in Camden. And we've got an interesting bunch of gigs. The nature of these things, that they're sort of spread out, but one of the things I'm quite excited about is that we have a week in residence in Aldborough, Snape Maltings, near the coast there, working with young musicians. I'm running a songwriting course there, and then we're going to be there as an ensemble. helping them write songs and produce them and perform them.
Fantastic. Sounds really good. So as well as a performer, you're also a very in-demand educator. So, and you've got a position at the academy, is that correct?
Yes, that's right. I've ended up having taught at several colleges. I seem to have roamed around holding a post at the Guildhall for a long time. I think I taught at Middlesex for a while. And anyway, I've landed up very happily at the academy, where they've allowed me to run the jazz composition department, which is great. They have a good ethos of composition there, and everybody has to write and perform their own material as part of their coursework. So I'm very busy there, and that's a very nice way to make a living.
And I mean, you don't just work in the academy. I mean, I know you do projects with schools and boroughs, and there's some event, isn't there, at the Albert Hall you do, or?
Yes, I mean, I work at both ends, really. I work with primary school children a lot. I'm a singer, and so that I think it's important that we keep primary school children singing. And a lot of the commissions I get, for instance, I work with the Borough of Merton a lot, and they commission me to write large-scale things to take as many children as possible to the Albert Hall and perform them. And it's good because I get to write for orchestra and big band, and it's very hard if you're a writer, you know. You don't get LSO commissions every week, you know. So if you want to keep your hand in, it's really nice to have the opportunity to write for choirs and orchestras and big bands. And
well, you certainly are well known in the Borough of Merton, as I've met a few of the people that work there, and they definitely sing your praises. Should we hear another track from your CD?
Yes, I mean, it kind of ties up with this Merton connection, because quite a lot of these things I've written for Merton contain songs that I thought might have a second life, and they're on the CD. So this next track, which is called Unbreakable Chain, was part of a project called With One Voice, where we wrote songs with the children. So we did some workshops and got some ideas from the kids, and then I created these songs containing some of their ideas and their hooks.
Some memories are hard to recall. The past can seem all in the mind. So hold on to your memories and try not to leave them behind. For your family and friends are all that you have, and though you may travel afar, this unbreakable chain will always remain to remind us of who we are. If the sky turns black, if you're caught in the pouring rain, keep the wind at your back, hang on to the unbreakable chain. In the dark of the night, in the teeth of the hurricane, keep your eye on the light, hang on to the unbreakable chain. Some choose a path of their own, they travel alone in their dreams, where the dark meets the light and nothing is quiet.
That was Unbreakable Chain from this wonderful CD, Stories to Tell. And my guest today is Pete Churchill. When you leave the summer school tomorrow, you're going to be going off, I know, to Germany, and then you were telling me you're going to Australia. I mean, to me, this says you're not just UK based; it's world based. I mean, are you finding yourself going just to specific countries, or are you literally getting calls every few weeks from different places?
I mean, it is interesting. I did establish a connection teaching in Brisbane. It's a choir summer school that I go to every year. And what's interesting is that the people who graduate from that, and some of their teachers or training to be teachers, they then go and work in the Pacific Rim and in the Far East. So that's maybe why I get to go to Singapore and I go to Malaysia. I'm going to Australia and New Zealand this month. I went to China last year. And that's simply because I've stepped over the equator and went to the southern hemisphere, and there's a whole other scene there with a whole. I suppose here, if I work in London, I might get to go to Europe, and I teach, and I've been to Finland and usual European countries and do educational things. But it is very interesting to go.
I suppose as well that English is the language in Australia, so communication is very important. And I know music's a universal language, but presumably if you're teaching or even trying to get conduct choirs, it does help with it if it's an
most people
country.
do speak English. I mean, I'm not very good at Mandarin or Malay yet, but I suppose I'm going to work on it sometime.
Okay. And back to the UK, I mean, one of the things that I know a lot of the students at my college talk about is this London Vocal Project. How did that get going?
Well, when I left the Guildhall, the final year, I always ran the vocal group at the Guildhall, and the final year that I was there was happened to be a very good, vibey kind of year, and we had a vocal group that was full of really wonderful people. And so when they left, and they wanted to stay together, and they asked me if I would run them, and that became the beginning of this thing, the London Vocal Project. And originally the idea was to get a few gigs, but just to get together every Monday night and sing. And that was eight years ago, I think. We've been every Monday night for 8 years. And so, I mean, you don't sing every week without getting a bit better every week. And so now they are astonishing. We've become not only a choir who do gigs. We've recorded some of Kenny Wheeler's vocal music. We did an album with Kenny and Norma. We did a gig at the Barbican with Bobby McFerrin a few years ago and sang a lot of that music. So we're working now on a project with Jon Hendricks, the great jazz lyricist and almost inventor of vocally, certainly one of the pioneers, who's 94. And I went to New York and moved in with him really to help him finish a project he'd been doing for some years, and lyricising the whole of the Miles Ahead album with Miles Davis and Gil Evans orchestrations. And I'm scoring that up for the choir, and I've just about finished. We got all 10 tracks done with John's lyrics, and we're rehearsing those like mad and hoping for a premiere here in London next year.
Oh, that'd be exciting.
Yeah, it is exciting, and it's very fresh, and of course it feels amazing to have this guy, Jon Hendricks, who's been writing this thing for over 40 years.
Wow.
And that's one of the points of the London Vocal Project. I might have wanted to help him before, but without a choir on tap who's really up for working really, really hard, I wouldn't have been able to say, we'll do this, let me finish it with you. That's how that's come about. And that's the London Vocal Project. That's one of our briefs anyway.
Well, do tell us when the date is, and I'm sure if I can announce it on the show near that time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Tell the listeners about it.
He told me he loved me, gave me red roses,
12 crimson roses,
as red as my blood. The roses he gave me, the roses are withered.
12 crimson roses,
As red as my blood. The roses he gave me,
the roses are withered,
crimson roses.
as red as my blood.
He told me he loved me, gave me red roses.
Crimson roses, as red as my blood.
He told me.
You're a very talented musician. I think the thing, not just for your playing and your writing, but the fact you do so much education work, I know because I work in education, and people, whenever they mention your name, and there are not many people in education, you can see the excitement in their eyes, and you communicate something very special. It's quite hard to convey it over a radio show. I mean, I was in one of your vocal classes, and I think, I mean, from what I understand, obviously you know exactly what you want out of your performers. You know the music, you can sing well, you can play the piano well. You have a great sense of humour. I think humour is a great way to communicate with people. And I think the result is that when people work with you, they actually really like you. You're a very likeable person. But there's certain educators, but I think you're the sort of person that, you have almost like a legacy. You start these things. So if I go to a borough and speak to people, they know you. They're like, oh, Pete, I've done some workshops in I don't know if you remember in Sefton years ago, and you'd gone into primary schools and they said, oh, Pete's not available, could you do it, do some jazz, and I could almost, or once they said your name, it was like, oh my gosh, how am I going to follow that? In a way, that's very special. What I'm saying is someone like you's doing something like that, I think it's really good.
I thought that time was on my side. I was wayward and carefree, I seem to recall. I was sure that tomorrow had nothing to hide. Every day was a lifetime I wasted in no time at all. Now all at once my world is cold, and I crumble inside as I stare at the wall. Not so sure of tomorrow, my future's on hold. Seems like somehow a lifetime is over in no time at all. You only get a moment to make your mark. Don't let it slip.
The last thing that I'd like to ask you, which I ask all of my interviewees, is let's look ahead 5 years. What would you like to be doing in 5 years? I mean, you could be realistic, it could be a fantasy, who knows? But what would you like to be doing in 5 years' time?
I'm not unhappy with the nature of my work now. I think it's very hard, as you will know, to keep the balance going if you play and you also teach, and you write. Trying to keep those three strands going is hard. I have got a plan to try and consolidate all the things I've written and see if I can make them available and published online. I think if I could get some of that together and available, and maybe that would be a good project. I think I'd like to maybe not travel so much. It sounds a bit crass to say that, but actually I enjoy my time with my family and I need some downtime, and I'm not very good at getting that work-life balance right. So that is definitely something that I'd like to work on, and maybe that's, if I could somehow establish some kind of online resource for some of the things that I have to offer, it might enable me not to just travel so much. And I like working in my own backyard as well. I live in Bedford, and I'm sure I could find things to do in Bedford and maybe get more sleep.
Okay, thank you very much, Pete Churchill, and we look forward to hearing lots of tracks from your CD, which I'll be playing in my future shows.
Thank you very much.
During the interview with Pete Churchill, you heard If Things Were Easy from the Sing Out Loud EP by Paula Vera, mentioned by Pete during the interview, and The Broken Heart from Mirrors on Audition Records. That was a suite of music composed by Kenny Wheeler with the London Vocal Project, directed by Pete Churchill, and featuring Norma Winston, with Kenny Wheeler on flugelhorn, Mark Lockhart saxophones, Nicky Arles piano, Steve Watts double bass, and James Madron drums. And finally, No Time at All from Pete's album Stories to Tell, featuring Mishka Adams. You've been listening to Andrea Vicari, Jazz Doodles on jazzlondonradio.com.